The Chicago Bears have started identifying potential replacement candidates for offensive coordinator Declan Doyle. But the good news is they shouldn't have any other new assistant coach openings to fill.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. On the show today, we'll get to know a couple of the first names on Ben Johnson's radar from outside of the organization to potentially replace offensive coordinator Declan Doyle. We'll also check in on how most of the coordinator openings around the NFL are filling up, which means the Bears aren't likely to lose anybody else. The likes of Al Harris and others seem to be here to stay for 2026, but we'll look at what still lies ahead for the Bears this offseason, as well as some of the other movement of Bears coaches. We're learning more about what Declan Doyle did for the Bears and how that will apply to what he's going to do for the Ravens. And also, I think we have to at least mention, even if it's just to laugh at, Matt Nagy becoming the offensive coordinator of the New York Giants. I want to thank you for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And we try to keep you up to date on all of the latest Bears news every single day. And the news of Tuesday was that offensive coordinator interviews are starting to trickle out as the Bears look to replace Declan Doyle, who left for the Baltimore Ravens job. Now, as it worked out, the Bears had one interview request go through, that they're getting the chance to interview a coach. Another one kind of surprisingly denied. But I think we should be really excited about at least the name that went through, that I don't know if he's going to be the Bears offensive coordinator or not, but he is an impressive candidate and one that I think Ben Johnson is smart to at least be talking to outside of his own organization. So the name that popped up that's been all over Bears fans' minds now is Connor Sanger. The Bears reportedly requested to interview the Arizona Cardinals passing game coordinator, who has also been the play caller in the last 2 East-West Shrine Bowls as part of the NFL draft, prep game. Sanger, of course, on a Cardinals staff that got fired, so Mike LaFleur's coming into Arizona and will likely he could retain Sanger, but Sanger is available to go look at other jobs at this point. He has also interviewed with the Buffalo Bills and Green Bay Packers for their quarterback coach jobs, but the Bears ready to talk to him about their offensive coordinator job. And to me, Connor Sanger is a little bit more in this mold of Declan Doyle, trajectory of coaches. I don't mean to make them exactly the same or on the exact same level, but someone who is a smart, well-regarded, young, fast ascending coach in at least some similar veins as Declan Doyle. Spent last season as the passing game coordinator in Arizona. The year before that, he was assistant quarterbacks coach, and before that, he was an offensive quality control coach. And that's pretty much been his NFL experience. And now, really 3 years in coaching the NFL, and he's already getting offensive coordinator jobs, or offensive coordinator interviews, I should say. And I don't think that's a fluke or an accident or, Ben Johnson doing somebody a favor here. I think it's a genuine, no, this guy is really smart and people think he's really smart. So let's bring him in and see if he would be a good fit and what kind of ideas he might have for the organization. Because I think what speaks to Sanger's qualifications here is it's less about, what has he done at the NFL level and more about how quickly he has risen. I mean, this is a player who, went from playing college football to coaching at Division III level. He coached at Division III for 3 seasons, then jumped to FCS, North Dakota State, coached there for a couple seasons, then jumped to the NFL and has coached there for a couple seasons. So it's everywhere he goes, he makes these big jumps quickly. And that's usually a really strong sign of a quality coach, right? This is not someone who has nepotismed their way up because he's the son of somebody and he knows a guy over here that can give him a leg up and give him that opportunity. He has taken full advantage of every single opportunity that has been put in front of him. And maybe he's not going to be the Bears offensive coordinator this year just yet, but he is someone who is like the early stages of a Declan Doyle type career, where Declan Doyle was like quality control coach for a couple years, position coach for a couple years, jumps to offensive coordinator, and now he's the Ravens offensive coordinator on the fast track. Like Connor Sanger is on this fast track, and I've heard nothing but good things. I wouldn't call him quite a friend of a friend, but I know some people that have some connections to Connor Sanger, and I've heard nothing but overwhelmingly positive things about him. So even if Ben Johnson might have other preferences at the offensive coordinator spot, I totally understand. Bring this guy in for an interview. See what he has to say. Maybe he'll blow you away and make you refuse to let you say no for an answer, or maybe he'll just give you some interesting ideas and perspectives about your offense, your quarterback, your team that you haven't heard from other coaches, because he's a fresh, young, innovative mind in this space that even if you don't hire him, maybe gives you some different things to chew on and think about when you talk to other potential offensive coordinator candidates. And Declan Doyle is definitely doing his homework around the NFL, because Ben Johnson's also doing his homework around the NFL, because the Bears also put in an interview request for Cincinnati Bengals wide receivers coach, Troy Walters. But Troy Walters declined the Bears interview request, which is really interesting in this process. He has had multiple teams interested in him as an offensive coordinator in recent years, but it sounds like a big part of this is that, in Cincinnati, Troy Walters gets to coach wide receivers, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and you're not going to do much better than that for coaching wide receivers in the NFL, to have a duo like that. And he says, well, you know what? I got a good gig here. Maybe I'll stick this one out and wait for, the perfect offensive coordinator opportunity, because I can see where someone like Troy Walters might say, well, in Chicago, I'm not going to get to be the play caller as coordinator. So maybe I don't want to just jump for a coordinator job just because it's a good team with a good coach, which I think should maybe still be worth it for him. But nonetheless, he's got his own life and his own situation and stuff. I can understand why he thinks, maybe I'll just stick in Cincinnati. But another name way outside of the Bears organization, never coached with Ben Johnson, hasn't hardly coached against Ben Johnson in the NFL. Same thing is true with Connor Sanger. And the only real connections I can find here for both of these guys, Troy Walters of the Cincinnati Bengals, the connection to Ben Johnson is that Bengals head coach Zach Taylor coached with Ben Johnson for multiple years on the Miami Dolphins staff. So I would imagine Ben Johnson probably has had good communication with his friend Zach Taylor and had found out more about Troy Walters and maybe came recommended as somebody that would be worth talking to there. In the same way that Ben Johnson hadn't worked with Declan Doyle, but got the recommendations from Sean Payton and Dan Campbell that might be a person Ben Johnson would want to bring in. Same conversation for Connor Sanger at Arizona. We know that last year's Arizona Cardinals offensive coordinator, Drew Petzing, is one of Ben Johnson's best friends, stood in Ben Johnson's wedding. And so that coordinator, Drew Petzing, is the one who helped promote Connor Sanger up through the Cardinals organization. So there has to have been, I'm sure, a strong recommendation there from coaches Ben Johnson trusts, telling you, hey, here's a smart guy in my organization that deserves a leg up and you should give him a listen. And Ben Johnson more than willing to say, yeah, if this guy can be the next Declan Doyle in this offense, by all means, bring him in and at least see what he has to say. Because, worst case scenario, those guys don't really mesh with you. They're not your cup of tea, and you can promote someone from the Bears staff. We've talked about, wide receivers coach Antoine Randall L., quarterbacks coach JT Barrett, or heaven forbid, pass game coordinator Press Taylor. They've got internal options that still probably feel like the most realistic outcome here, but might as well talk to all these other coaches that you don't get a chance to talk to these guys otherwise. You're not allowed to pick their brain in this way unless they're interviewing for your offensive coordinator job. So talk to all the smart young coaches you can and see what they tell you. I like Ben Johnson's approach there. Whenever the Bears make an offensive coordinator choice, you can be sure we'll break it down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast, because we're looking around the NFL and there aren't a lot of other coordinator job openings left, which is also a good sign for the Bears that you're not going to lose any of your other assistant coaches. So we'll take a look at how this game of musical chairs has played out with Al Harris not having a new chair and just coming back to his old one for now, next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. So instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online, and they'll handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off of your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. The Locked On Bears podcast is sponsored by Betterhelp. February can be a lot. Flowers, candy, stuffed animals, and so much talk about relationships. And it can honestly feel like everyone else has it all together in their love life. But here's the truth. Whether you're married, dating, single, or just focusing on yourself, most people are still figuring it out. And no matter where you are in your romantic journey, therapy can help you find your way. It can help you get clear on what you want, what feels heavy, and how to take some of the pressure off of yourself. Because it's easy to assume everyone else has the perfect relationship, but most people are working through something, and therapy can help you recognize patterns that may be weighing your relationships down. BetterHelp has licensed therapists in the US, and they do the initial matching work for you, so you can focus on your goals. And if you want to switch therapists, you can do that at any time. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/lockedon. So while the Chicago Bears look to fill their offensive coordinator role, they're one of the few teams left with an offensive coordinator role to fill. As you start to look around the NFL, more and more teams are quickly finding that guy, getting their coaching staff settled. As you know, we've already now been through the very early stages of the draft process, right? Senior Bowl and East-West Shrine Game, where like you're looking at draft prospects for your offense or defense that would obviously need a coordinator in place to know what kind of players you're going to want for that offense and defense. And a little different for the Chicago Bears, where you've already got your offensive and defensive play callers in place, but still you're seeing other teams with a little bit bigger sense of urgency to go out and find that guy. And particularly, it's been teams like the Bears that haven't filled their offensive coordinator job in large part because they have their offensive play caller in their head coach. And there's only a couple of defensive coordinator jobs left in this mix as well. And the big Bears takeaway is that in all likelihood, you're not going to lose any more of your staff members. You can't say that with certain because there are still a couple of jobs left, but everything we've heard so far about Bears assistants interviewing elsewhere, Declan Doyle is the only one who's actually gotten any of the jobs, and all the other jobs are filled up. And so, sure, another, like Al Harris, for example, could get another interview somewhere and then get that job, or another Bears offensive assistant could get an OC interview somewhere and then end up getting that job. But for now, all of the teams that Bears coaches have interviewed with have filled their roles. As we look around the NFL right now, technically speaking, there are 7 offensive coordinator openings, at least at the time I'm recording this on Tuesday. Heck, by the time you listen to this, it might already have a few of those filled. 7 offensive coordinator openings, but really only 2 of them are offensive coordinators that will call plays. We still need to see who the Seahawks replace Clint Kubiak with when he leaves for the Las Vegas Raiders job. And then, at least at the time I'm recording this, Aaron Glenn has not hired his new offensive coordinator in New York. And I guess that's the one spot that could still scare you, given the Ben Johnson connections. Would you want to pull one of his former Lions coaches like Antoine Randall L. and like JT Barrett? But 2 thoughts on that quickly. One, I'm not sure if Antoine Randall or JT Barrett would want to leave for the job. Like, even if it's a promotion, even if it's a chance to call plays, they're smart enough to look at the Jets situation right now and see that Aaron Glenn is flailing. They don't have a quarterback. He just fired a bunch of his staff and I haven't seen the FanDuel odds, but I would bet Aaron Glenn will be one of the favorites to be first head coach fired next season, right? Like, that Jets team has been a pretty major disaster. And as much as these guys might like and respect Aaron Glenn, they might respectfully decline and say, you know what, I'm better off here in Chicago where we'll have some success as opposed to jump to the Jets for one season as a coordinator and then be out of a job again. Like, I don't necessarily know that these Bears coaches are going to be quick to go to New York. And then also the coaches that Aaron Glenn has interviewed for offensive coordinator have been primarily guys who have done it before and have been more experienced, that he's looking for veteran coaches to come in and kind of stabilize it and right the ship, as opposed to like come in and try and like have your first offense and figure it out on the fly. Like, they've talked to Darrell Bevel, former Seahawks and Lions and I think Dolphins offensive coordinator, Vikings maybe in there too. They talked to Greg Roman, who was the Chargers offensive coordinator and Ravens offensive coordinator. They interviewed Frank Reich, who was Eagles offensive coordinator, Colts head coach, right? Like, experienced veteran coaches that feel like a little bit of a panic move by Aaron Glenn. And I don't know that he has the security to go to a first-time play caller offensive coordinator like Antoine Randall L. or JT Barrett or anybody else from this Bears offensive staff in that regard. So that group feels clean. Should note the Bears still have to hire a running backs coach, but there won't be a new opening to fill there. But then also for Al Harris on defense. Again, at the time I'm recording this, there are 3 defensive coordinator vacancies that are truly open. And we'll see there's talk that Vic Fangio might retire in Philadelphia, and then that could become an opening. There's also talk that Jim Schwartz may fill that opening in Philadelphia, but technically the Browns' defensive coordinator job is considered open because Schwartz is under contract, but he doesn't want to be back in Cleveland. So they're still trying to suss that out. But Todd Monken in his introductory press conference, did not do a good job of doing any favors for mending that relationship. But the Cardinals still need a defensive coordinator under Mike LaFleur. The Raiders still need a defensive coordinator under Clint Kubiak, and then the Browns will still need a defensive coordinator under Todd Monken. But every other defensive coordinator role has filled. And honestly, Jim Schwartz could fill in any other opening that's still out there. So like, there isn't a job left that Al Harris has interviewed for that he could then still take. Again, not totally out of the question that, Mike LaFleur could interview him in Arizona. Hasn't happened, hasn't been reported, but could still be in the mix. Obviously, Clint Kubiak hasn't been able to officially take over the Raiders' job yet, so then he can't officially start interviewing coaches for his OC and DC positions until the Seahawks are done with the Super Bowl on Sunday. So like, there's still a possibility that they could want to interview Al Harris. But like, throughout this process, Al Harris has interviewed with the Green Bay Packers, the Tennessee Titans, and the Washington Commanders are the most firm ones I've seen reported. And then he was connected to the Steelers job with Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys job where he used to coach. I didn't necessarily see like specific reporting that said he for sure did do interviews with them, but there's been these at least 5 of these defensive coordinator jobs that have at least been in the vicinity of Al Harris, and he didn't get any of them. And I wonder if that says anything. I'm not ready to jump the ship there and say, oh, that must mean Al Harris is a bad interviewer or whatever. It could be very well that Al Harris interviewed for those and said, you know what? Maybe I don't want to go to Tennessee, or you know what? Maybe I don't want to go to Washington. I want to be the play caller, so those wouldn't be play calling opportunities with defensive head coaches. It's like there's plenty of reasonable explanations as to why Al Harris was connected to 5 jobs and didn't get any of them. Like, the Packers really seemed to want to jump on Jonathan Gannon. They didn't even wait for Jim Leonard to become available, even though there was reportedly mutual interest between the Packers and Leonard, and they jumped on Gannon instead right away. I think they wanted an experienced defensive coordinator. So like, I'm not ready to have this be some referendum on Al Harris. I think the good news is just he's probably going to be back. You're going to have the guy that helped you turn your secondary into something that can generate turnovers in an unbelievable fashion, get a career year out of Kevin Byard, career year out of Nashawn Wright, and get by with guys like Nick McLeod and CJ Gardner-Johnson and a bunch of backups coming in the secondary. Like, he's a valuable piece to have sticking around, and you'll get him for at least another year in 2026. And then, by all expectations, he'll get to be a defensive coordinator next year, we assume, unless there's something more going on here. And if not, hey, keep him as long as you absolutely can in this Bears offense. But there still has been plenty of changing of these Bears coaches going elsewhere, former Bears coaches going elsewhere, with Eric Bieniemy now with the Chiefs, Declan Doyle now going to the Ravens, and our old friend Matt Nagy headed to the New York Giants to be offensive coordinator. We'll talk a little more about what the Bears are losing by not having Declan Doyle around, with Cole Kmet providing some really good insight there. And then we can talk about and maybe just laugh at Matt Nagy going to the New York Giants. next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Home Chef. As we're rolling in the new year, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between your busy workday, these cold winter nights, and just having a packed schedule, sometimes having an easy, reliable dinner plan can make a huge difference, and that's where Home Chef comes in. Because Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. And it's easy to see why. They've got meals that come ready to fit your schedule. 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, quick lunches, however in-depth you want to go, Home Chef lets you choose. You can save time and money with Home Chef customers saving an average of $86 per month on groceries. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, plus free shipping and free dessert for life. You must be an active subscriber to keep receiving the free dessert. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by Gusto. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. But that's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. They allow you to do unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. And they give you access to certified HR experts at any time to give you real peace of mind. So try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonnfl to get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedonnfl. One more time, that's GUSTO, gusto.com/lockedonnfl. I want to thank you again for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today. We are your team every day, and we really appreciate all of you that tune in every single day. Whether it's once a week, or 5 times a week, you are the lifeblood of what we do here on Locked On Bears. And if you want to take that listening to the next level, you can always check out the Locked On Bears Everydayers Club. That's going to give you access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Bears. It's compatible with Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all the other major podcasting apps, plus an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayers Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. If you want to find out more, head to the website lockedonbears.supercast.com, and you can find that link in the show notes description for every episode of the Locked On Bears podcast. But you're looking around the NFL, and all of a sudden, you've got 3 former Bears coaches as offensive coordinators, with Eric Bieniemy back on the Chiefs, Declan Doyle on the Ravens, and Matt Nagy on the New York Giants. A crazy world we're living in, where former Bears offensive coaches are spreading around the NFL as play callers. And I think it's a good opportunity to check in on a couple of these. One thing with Declan Doyle, right? One of the big questions is like, well, he wasn't calling plays for Ben Johnson. So what was he actually really even doing? Like, okay, he's involved in some game planning stuff and kind of overseeing the offense when Ben isn't around, but like, is that all that valuable? And like, isn't that easy to replace? And I think there's some truth to that, but Cole Kmet did an interview with WSCR, 670 The Score, and did a really good job of explaining a little bit more about what specifically Declan Doyle's role was in this Bears offense. He said, quote, "Even though Declan didn't call plays for us, the amount of work he did on the offensive side of the ball was immense. You could see that every day in practices. Declan was very hands-on with all of us." Kmet went on to say, quote, "Declan's the one addressing the offense at halftime, going over the openers that are going to be coming up in the second half, telling us what we need to do, what they're seeing, and how we can make adjustments. Declan was a very valuable piece to us offensively." And that's more than I think most of us would have assumed about Declan Doyle, like especially like halftime adjustments, right? Especially the Bears were really good at that this season. Like offense started slow quite a bit, finished strong quite a bit, and making those halftime adjustments were the difference between winning and losing a bunch of their games this season. So it can and will be absolutely a big loss for not having Declan Doyle in there. I don't want that to be like a panic because the Bears are going to lose their ability to adjust at halftime though either. Like it can both be true that Declan Doyle was really good at it, and the Bears can find somebody else who's also really good at it. And that I do wonder how much of what Cole Kmet is saying there is a reflection of Ben Johnson giving Declan Doyle all those opportunities that Ben Johnson could handle himself, but chose to entrust a smart young coach with a wide variety of opportunities. But it's not like if Declan Doyle's gone, like Ben Johnson can make the halftime adjustments if he wants to. He would prefer to have a smart young offensive coordinator to make those offensive adjustments, and he's going to go find a smart offensive coordinator to be the person who makes those halftime adjustments. But it's not like no one else can do it, and you've just now lost that ability to do that with Declan Doyle being gone. Like I think it speaks very highly of what Declan Doyle can do as Ravens offensive coordinator, more so than it signals something massive that the Bears won't be able to replace. It is a loss for sure, but replaceable, yes. And that's reassuring in the process there. But also, I think a little eye-opening is like, oh yeah, that makes sense. There's some stuff in there that Doyle's doing. Even if he's not actually calling the plays, his fingerprints and hands are on the offensive success the Chicago Bears had this season. Certainly more offensive success than the Bears had consistently with Matt Nagy as offensive coordinator, who finds his way now to John Harbaugh and the New York Giants, hands-on with Jackson Dart. And I'm curious how that one's going to go, because for Nagy, it is a real like play calling opportunity outside of underneath the shell of Andy Reid. Like that was one of the big things as he was potentially interviewing for head coaching jobs, was like, he got to call plays for the Bears and made plenty of mistakes along the way and admitted to, having too many voices in the room and, kind of being maybe a little bit too much of a pushover is too harsh of a word here, right? But too, not being firm enough in what he believed in and stood on and running things the way that he thought they should and maybe needed to have a little bit more of a foot down in some of those moments. Now he doesn't have to do all the leadership responsibility of a head coach, but you can get a better sense of like what he's learned and what he can do on offense. And he does have a young quarterback there in Jackson Dart, with a really, really good young wide receiver there in Malik Neighbors, a young running back like Cam Skedabo. They got some tight end talent there. Like, I think there's some potential for things to work out. Do I think Matt Nagy is going to be a great coordinator who's going to be a hot head coach in 2 years because he's done such a great job with the Giants offense? Probably not, but I think he can start to branch out a little bit from the Andy Reid tree there. Like I don't want to say I'm cautiously optimistic for Matt Nagy, but I am curious. I think Giants fans have been panicking pretty good. Titans fans were panicking that they might get Matt Nagy because they saw how it went in Chicago. But I'm willing to hear it out. It wasn't maybe the flashy name that Giants fans wanted, but I think, he's been an offensive coordinator for a long time. And maybe if you take the head coaching duties off of his plate, he could at least be good enough in that role. But on the same note, like what Eric Bieniemy does differently with the Chiefs offense next year and beyond is going to be really telling too, right? Like much like how Declan Doyle is not the play caller in Chicago, like Bieniemy won't be the play caller in Kansas City, but you're still going to see his fingerprints on it. Like we talked about Declan Doyle's fingerprints on it. And if we see the Chiefs offense, take some big steps and really bounce back in a huge way this season, it's going to be hard for that to not reflect poorly on Matt Nagy, understanding that the Chiefs dealt with some injuries on offense for sure, and that this offseason they could go out and bring in some new weapons and retool in a way that Bieniemy could have more resources to work with than Matt Nagy had to work with in Kansas City. But still, we can look at it from like a scheme standpoint and a success standpoint. I mean, it's worth remembering Matt Nagy as offensive coordinator went to the Super Bowl with the Chiefs last year, like 2 years ago, like the 2024 season Super Bowl. I guess it's the most recent Super Bowl before this one that's happening this weekend included Matt Nagy's Kansas City Chiefs. So it's not like the Chiefs offense was always struggling with Nagy, and then if they go to Bieniemy, they're going to be back, and it'll be a huge difference because Bieniemy is the lifesaver there. But like, I do want to see, like, does it have a little bit of a different flavor, a little twist to it? Do they attack the field in some different ways and do some different things with their offense because of this new perspective brought in the building that they weren't having from Matt Nagy there? It's fun to see Bears fingerprints elsewhere in the NFL instead of the Bears constantly hoping to get the right fingerprints from other teams. Like the Ben Johnson coaching tree is beginning, and not that Bieniemy or Nagy belongs to that tree, but like we're just starting to see sort of like the success here begetting other success elsewhere, and it's going to be fun to watch. But hey, as long as we keep seeing the success here, that's what's going to be most important. And when the Bears hire an offensive coordinator or make any other coaching changes, you could be sure we'll break it down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Don't forget to check out that Everydayers Club if you want the ad-free audio feed of Locked On Bears, or you want to join the Locked On Bears exclusive listener group chat on Discord. Again, lockedonbears.supercast.com, or you can find that link in the show notes for the podcast episode. Just make sure you come on back tomorrow. Make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.